then, as you are proceeding towards actually exiting the body, that vibration may be raised higher in order to, make it possible for the spirit to detach from the body. People will go out of their body in different ways. Some people do it with thought. Some people roll out. Some people, kind of just have some assistance from spiritual guardians that are around them that help them to lift out the first times. There's a process that occurs, though, as you proceed through these experiences, where you will proceed to higher and higher realms of knowledge. And so the process will change dramatically over the years, depending on what you're called to do and what you are being drawn into. But that is usually how people will experience it in the beginning.
Okay. And after you've been having it for a long time, I mean, can you actually invoke going into an out-of-body on your own?
Well, the way I would put it, it's not that you're doing it on your own, but that you know how to be in a state of preparedness to receive it, so to speak. So there are people who will do it of their own accord. My own recommendation has always been that you want to allow the higher power of the universe to guide your traveling, because you don't know what you don't know. So we as human beings are going to tend to be very limited in what we might seek or ask for. And what the universe has to show us is almost always going to be much more astounding than what we could even think up. So we're going to think up things that are very trivial and minimal in comparison. And so, now what I would do, I do a lot of practices with meditation and prayer and things like this. And I have a lot of things that I do around my home to create a vibrational atmosphere that makes it easier for these experiences to occur. And by doing so, then, I am allowing the universe to work through my body and my soul and bring these things about. But I've always allowed, and I really always highly recommend, allowing a higher power of the universe to guide the journeys, because we don't have a clue what is out there for us until we do that. Because there is so much more than what is commonly known or what is commonly perceived to actually be achieved in these realms. There are an infinite number of higher realms, an infinite number of lower realms, and an infinite number of mortal realms. We're not talking about traveling like through one dimension or two dimensions or three or four. We're talking about infinitesimal levels of dimensions. So in order for us to really fully comprehend, we have to put ourselves under the guidance of teachers. And, interestingly enough, as you proceed through the journeying in the out-of-body travel state, you'll find that there is a process that most people do go through, and my books go into this in great detail, which is, how we actually begin to undergo evolution of the spirit and work through issues in the soul, work through the issues that we have come to this mortal realm to work through, and attain to higher and higher vibrational states. And what happens in this process is that you're going to have different guardian angels, you're going to have different teachers, spiritual guardians throughout the journey. So the teachers that you have in the beginning are possibly going to start by teaching you about oneness, but then you're going to start moving towards a whole plethora of different types of spiritual guardians and guidance that you're going to receive from many different sources as you proceed through these evolutionary spheres. And it's just impossible to guess. The only way to do it is to have a certain level of surrendering to the universe, bringing to you what you need in that given moment to learn.
Interesting. Now, can I ask you a question? One of the guests I had on out-of-body time travel says you could actually go back and change things in your life. Is that possible, or have you been able to do that?
Well, what I have experienced is that there are many corridors and tunnels that you will experience in out-of-body travel. So there are some that will take you into the initiation rites. There are some that will take you into higher or lower realms. But there's also what is known as the time tunnel. And the time tunnel, you can travel backwards and forwards in time. And I've had many, many experiences and journeys where I've been taken into previous time periods, future time periods, parallel time periods, to make alterations in situations. I don't recall ever doing that for changing something in my current life now. Now, as to what they're saying, that would be interesting because I think it's possible, because what can happen is you're going to go in there and do when you're in the out-of-body travel state, you're working with what I call the management realm. The management realm contains all the thoughts and the actions that are leading towards what's going to happen on the ground based on what energy is being put out. And so this is sometimes, ironically, what a lot of psychics will touch into is the management realm. This is also partly why the perception of a psychic can be slightly off at times, because the management realm can still be altered. It hasn't hit the ground yet. So, yes, someone could definitely travel back in time, go back into this management realm, and alter something as an outcome in their own life. I've never been drawn to do that or guided to do that. I have had thousands of experiences where I have been drawn in to do that for other souls. And so we go in and we alter something that might hit the ground and might significantly damage, like the destiny or purpose of a particular individual. Sometimes we call it their program. If someone's making just a bad mistake, or they have a danger in their path and they're not aware of it, and they need some, this is where guardian angels come in, but it's also much more than just guardian angels. There's a whole spiritual system in place to help with altering realities in those realms before they hit the ground. And so that can actually be done.
Interesting. Now, also going out of body, travel and stuff like that, traveling to like parallel universes. Have you done that often?
Going into parallel universes?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. The interesting thing in the out-of-body travel state is that you will find that there are actually multiple, I would say, minimum, 15 or 20 different lines of destiny that your current life can actually be playing out in parallel dimensions. But the parallel realities go well beyond that, because even just when you are leaving your body, when you enter into the spiritual awareness, you're going to see, for instance, the way that your room might appear in the physical sphere, you will see it how it appears in the astral sphere, and there will be differences. Sometimes I've had times where they've actually almost like rolled this circular device where you're seeing all the infinite possibilities. You might see 20 or 30 possibilities of how this is manifesting in 15 or 20 different parallel realities. But parallel realities goes well beyond what we're seeing here. So we have many different possible lifelines from the one that we're living in right now that could be playing out in parallels. But we also have the parallel realities that occur with higher dimensional beings and lower dimensional beings. And this is one of the things that I think people are misunderstanding about what we're seeing come to the surface these days, because a lot of, like, for instance, the extraterrestrials, they're coming in on a lot of these different interdimensional portals that are really parallel to our own. Not all of them, but many of them are. And so what we're not realizing is that we have these worlds that are overlapping, but we just haven't been aware of them until maybe more recently, except for, we have had prophets, saints, mystics, and sages from, thousands of years who have been aware of certain things like these. But as a humanity, we're starting to come forward in recognizing that existence is much bigger than what we see in front of us through our physical three-dimensional eyes. And so we are now dealing with understanding multidimensional existence because it does overlap and parallel everything we do.
Interesting. So, in other words, that some of these ETs can actually being crossed over into our world from another type of world system, what you're saying. Is simple words, yes.
Yes, and like for instance, with the extraterrestrials, excuse me, you have some beings that we know have physical characteristics, like the Greys and the reptilians, and there's praying mantis things. We hear about different manifestations that people have seen that are physical. But there are also these other extraterrestrials that are primarily interdimensional, and that would go with the Pleiadians, and then there's other races. There are two specific races that I like to talk about because I was given, really, really honored to be given the opportunity in both of their cases to experience what their vibration and what their level of evolution is, which is so far beyond us that it's really impossible to put it into words. But these particular two races are races that are here only for the purpose of spiritual evolution of the human soul. Many of the other races have other purposes here as well. The Pleiadians have a great deal to do here with the spiritual evolution as well, but there's also other purposes mixed with that. The other beings like the Greys, the reptilians, they're mortal beings, which means that they're just simply looking to fulfill needs that they have. And, just as it's not that much different from, Christopher Columbus discovering America, it's going to be similar to this. We have other races that are coming in who are physical, who have physical needs, mortal needs, it's just going to be like that. They're going to have remnants of both good and evil within them. They're not, just purely enlightened beings. These two species that I'm talking about are not of that nature at all. These are pure light beings that come from very distant star planets, and they come through interdimensionally. The first ones that I saw them in the Himalayan mountains, in a mystical experience. I've never been there physically. And what they showed me was that their vibration is so high, they've only been able to make contact with 5 incarnate human souls. The reason for this is that their vibration is so far beyond us that most of us, we're just not prepared for it. And we need to prepare for it. And so they were showing me how important it was for us to become receptive to their thrust. And what their thrust is that they implant within our spirit energetic elements that will help us to move further and go towards evolution rather than standing still, which is a lot of what the problem has been for the human soul. We have to look at the human soul when we're talking about the out-of-body travel experience. The other race, also from a very distant planet, but interdimensional light beings. These are extraterrestrials, and what they allowed me to do was I was embraced by the entity, and as I did so, I melted into him, and it was like we switched places for a moment. I was allowed to travel to his world, and he kind of held my place here in this one while I did so to speak. And it was such a beautiful, such a highly loving, such a highly evolved place. I really didn't want to return. When I came back, I was just so in awe of it and so honored to have been allowed to experience it. But, he did share with me that was all I could handle at that time. Because, again, we as human beings we need to, work towards being more and more able to receive from these higher thrusts. And what happens is that because we generally operate from such a physical dimension of existence, it becomes hard for the assistance from the higher places to actually reach us. We have to reach out for the ability to raise our vibration in order to be able to receive that. Ironically, raising the vibration is a big part of the out-of-body experience. You will actually go through what I call vibrational raisings for many, many years, and then the vibrational raisings will also transmute into different types of experiences and ways of operation. But the reason you have to go through these vibrational raisings is because every time you're transcending to a higher world or a higher realm, you have to have your vibration at the level that makes you compatible. If you try to go into a realm that is too high for the actual vibrational level of the particles of your soul, you will feel like you're being crushed. It's very, very profound experience. They allowed me to experience it on a couple of occasions so I could understand why the vibrational raising was absolutely essential, because we can't actually travel higher unless we are actually engaging in raising that vibrational level. But going back to these particular races, that is part of the key of being able to receive from these particular societies who have only the best interests for the evolution of the human soul. They have nothing to gain from helping us. They just do it as a noble deed.
Well, Marilynn, I got to ask.
So
I got to ask you a question here.
Sure.
I'm confused. Okay, when you kind of went into his place and you got to see what his world was like, what comment did he have to you when he shared your body? I mean, thoughts and surroundings.
Basically, the comment, there weren't. You have to remember, they don't really communicate in the way that we do. They're much more telepathic, so it's much more of an energetic exchange, because these are very highly evolved ones. But basically, to be blunt, it was very uncomfortable for him, and he let me know, because I was basically begging, please let me just go to your world and stay there. And he was letting me know that I was not ready, and that I was, it was almost kind of like funny that I would ask, because I still had such a long way to go before I could even consider anything close to that. So he was trying to be kind, but at the same time let me know that it was a ridiculous proposition, because I had to earn my right to live in such a place. And that's part of what our spiritual journey really is. And in the out-of-body experience, I write a lot about this in The Mysteries of the Redemption, which is, that's available at the website outofbodytravel.org. But there's a process that we're going through as we're doing these out-of-body experiences. It's not just for the sake of, wow, this is cool. It's for the sake of purification. We live in what's called the third and fourth realm here on Earth. And this isn't the only place that is a third and fourth realm world. We are one of many, but this is a third and fourth realm world, which means that this is one of those worlds where the battles between good and evil take place. So that makes it similar to like a purgatorial type world. So what you have is that we incarnate here for the purpose of uncovering our karmic influences, uncovering our vices, and the things which are holding us back from the light. And so, in essence, we're looking for what are the dark spots within our souls that are holding us back from going higher. And so, in a mortal world, we have to focus on the purification of the darkness within ourselves and on the darkness around us in the world around us. We have both of those things to deal with when we are incarnate in a world like this. And so we're trying to move from this energy. Now, when you are in the third and fourth realm, what you have is the realms below us are the realms of ever-increasing darkness, and the realms above us are ever-increasing light. And we're here right in the middle world where there's both. There's elements of good and evil here. And in order for us to really start soaring and move into the fifth realms and above, we have to purify. And in order for me to ever be able to go to that planet, that beautiful place, that world, I would have to progress quite a bit before I could be, worthy to receive such a gift. I was very honored and lucky to even just be made aware of its existence. And I think somewhat, to some degree, it's important for people to know that these higher places exist, but we have to reach for them in order to eventually be able to attain to them. If we don't realize that they are out there, if we don't realize that there is more to achieve and more to ascend towards, we have a tendency to stand still. And this is a very common hindrance in the mortal world here and in mortal realms, where people will stand still because they're not realizing that there is something to be achieved while we're here. And if we achieve those things, there are wonderful, wonderful, beautiful transitions into lighter and finer frequencies of light. But we do earn them. We have to earn them, and we go through processes to be made ready. We have to become compatible to, so to speak. One of the things that's very important to understand about the out-of-body experiences and the spiritual world, and this also applies very much to the afterlife, which is compatibility. We go where we're compatible. So when we cross over, we're going to naturally resonate above, middle, or even go down a little bit, depending on where our loves are. And our loves can be for the higher, finer things or for lower things. And the ironic thing is, in the out-of-body experience, you will find that the things that hold us back actually put weight upon our soul, which means that, so when you're actually out of body and you're floating, if you have like a hindrance, you're going to start going down. But as you're throwing off hindrances, you all of a sudden become lighter and you start rising higher and higher. And so there's a lot of relevance here with compatibility, but also the weight of the soul. So we want to remove things that are holding us down and the things that are hindering us from rising to higher, finer frequencies, which, hopefully at some point will lead us to being able to be part of some of these beautiful higher frequency worlds that we may not yet be compatible to.
But how many people out there actually have out-of-body experiences? Or do they have it without realizing it?
Most people do have them when they're sleeping at night. There are different levels of consciousness involved. So some people will have, most people are unconscious or subconscious, which means they won't remember what's happening. That does not mean, however, that the angelic realm is not working on them in their sleep or things like that. There are also darker forces that work as well, and that's, getting into the battles between the principalities and the powers, which is something, a whole other subject there. But we are always being assisted, especially as we ask for it and seek it, whether we're aware of it or not. But there are some people who are more aware of aspects of it. They might have an experience here or there that they remember, or they may have an experience that they remember in part, like through a lucid dream. When you have an actual fully conscious out-of-body experience, it's not going to be one of those things where you're like, did I or didn't I? It's going to be so powerful that you have no question. And the reason for that is because when you go into the vibrational state, That is so intensely powerful, you cannot deny it. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to hear what I call the thoughts of humanity. You're going to start hearing the voices, and you're going to start hearing what sounds a lot like jet engine noises. That's the different sounds of the astral plane and other planes that you might be going to travel. When you actually separate from your physical body fully consciously, it is such a powerfully mind-altering experience. You will have no question that you actually had a fully conscious out-of-body experience. A lot of people misunderstand that. You can have different levels where you can have portions of memory, but they're not fully conscious. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but it isn't the same as a fully conscious. And when you have it fully consciously, you're not going to have any doubt what that was. The power of it, the vibrations, the frequencies that you're touching into sound-wise, vibration-wise, it's all going to be so overwhelmingly present. It's an undeniable experience.
It sounds interesting. One of my guests I had on, months ago, he wrote a book on, too, again, about time travel, out-of-body experiences. When he was about 13 years old, he had his first out-of-body experience. And in what he saw when he was 13, he saw that, one, he was going to be a professor. This is to somebody that was going to school. It wasn't doing very good at school at 13 and 14. And he actually had his out-of-body experience. He fell out of a tree, matter of fact. And while he was unconscious, he had his out-of-body experience. And he saw his life, going forward, at a certain age, he was going to become a professor. At a certain age, he saw himself traveling, like to Japan and all this stuff. And you know what? When he got 30-some years old, it all started happening. And he remembered his dream or out-of-body experience. Have you ran across people like that?
Oh, that's not uncommon at all. I've heard that in a lot of cases of people who have been given that kind of information. There's a lot of people in my field, other colleagues and writers who have had that. When I had my experience at the age of 9, I was shown that I was going to have some type of calling with this that would come upon me later in life, and it did, And I've just heard from many, many people, because I get a lot of emails and stuff. People have this type of experience pretty commonly. Even if it's not fully like a totally out-of-body experience, people will have it in some kind of really mind-blowing dream when they're younger, and it kind of sets the stage and helps them to remember the destination of their life. And, we spoke earlier about the program. The program being what we came here to do. Why did we incarnate again? What are we here to do? And so part of the purpose of those experiences is to help the soul to be focused forward towards the purpose of the incarnation, that they will hopefully reach towards the purpose of why they came back. A lot of times, a lot of people, when they come back into another lifetime, they can get lost. We can get diverted, we can get unfocused, distracted, and all sorts of things. And so, ironically, one of the things that people who have out-of-body experiences will definitely feel is a guiding hand to keep them on that path towards that purpose that they set out to accomplish originally.
What do you see with the higher plane of these two races of aliens? Did they give you any clues what's going to happen on our planet if we don't evolve?
I think that we have a few different possible outcomes, and this is what I've, and it's kind of, it's a little bit sad, but, the original intention was for them to help us to transition to a higher spiritual energy and move the Earth into, like, the galactic council of planets and galaxies and stuff. And that has been a little bit diverted. So what we have is several potential outcomes. One is the planet can go towards standing still, so to speak. And if that's the case, it's going to become more and more deadened, so to speak. The spiritual will be harder to attain. It will be harder for people to manage a thrust that has to do with evolutionary purpose. We could go backwards, and that could happen in any number of ways. That could be nuclear war. That could be an asteroid hits the planet. It could be do-over. You know what I mean? We could, be looking at the end of civilization as we know it, and it all has to start again. It could also be what I was shown many, many years ago was a time that is coming in the next 10 to 15 years now. I had this in the early 90s. I was given the exact dates, but what I was shown was we could be looking at a very serious world conflict, the outcome of which would be planet determinative. It would either be going towards darkness or towards light. And very, very serious times ahead of us. We had a lot of help coming in about 10 years ago from the Pleiadians and some other civilizations. They've had to pull back because there is a lot of clatter, I guess I would say, just, the chatter of the planet, the intemperance of the thoughts of humankind. It's very difficult for a higher program, a higher purpose to actually emerge into the consciousness of humanity. We are kind of a stubborn little species,
Oh, you can say that again.
Yes. And so it hasn't been easy, and it's been, kind of wavering, going backwards a little bit, where we've had a lot more evil enter into the atmosphere, which has led to a lot of conflicts that have been very, 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 very serious around the world that are becoming, determinative. Of course, we also have the issues that will come from the climate and planetary change issues.
That's what, Marilynn, I'm really worried about that because, I talk about it a lot on my show, is I really think that they're not being honest with the people. I think it's a lot shorter time we have before these major effects with Antarctica, the melting of the ice, the sea level, maybe the stalling of the water coming from the equator, going up to Europe, keeping it from turning it into an ice age. I got the magnetic field is moving big time, fast. We're ready for a pole shift. I mean, I think our planet more than ever needs help right now, and I'm really, really concerned.
Well, I think that we have good reason to be concerned, and the climate change issue is an issue regardless, but then you have the influx of what about if there's any kind of nuclear detonations, which would impact climate change even more, and the habitability of the planet. And from what I have experienced with many of these races, especially the ones who are physical, third and fourth dimensional type beings, who, like the Greys and all these guys who are, mortal beings like we are, is that this is not the first time in apparently, universal history where planets have been destroyed by stupid activities of the inhabitants. You know what I mean? So, so one of the things that is of great concern is trying to prevent if you look at our world, we have so many ecologies. We have so many species of life, animals, plants. We have a very unusual planet in that regard. So there is a great deal of concern about this. That doesn't mean there aren't other planets out there with similar possibilities, but, I think we lose sight of the fact that the Earth is really quite special. When you look at places like Mars, which is primarily, desert, And you look at places like Venus, which is just gas, a lot of gas. Look at these other types of planetary systems and what are possible. A planet like Earth is something very special, and that's why we've got the attention of the Galactic Federation. It's because they want to do everything humanly possible to help us not to destroy it, But it can happen, and it is of great concern. I do know that a lot of assistance has been coming in from the extraterrestrials, but also from higher realms as well, the angelic, So you have a lot of different sources that are trying to help stabilize the planet. But these are real serious problems, and we're not really going to know the outcome of them for another good, 10 to 15 years as to where we will stand. And but the thing that each one of us can do is reaching out for the higher spiritual thrust. Every single soul who does this makes the potential of the planet rise. And so, we feel very powerless because, we are just one person. But every single one of us, when we reach for that, it's like taking the hand of the eternal, allowing ourselves to become a vessel for the cleansing of not only our souls, but also this planet, this world. There's going to be a lot of concern over the Earth because of the fact that we have such a unique planet. There are so many different kinds of life that can exist on the surface of the Earth. We have so many different kinds of life that can exist in the sea as well as on the land. We have deserts, mountain. We have, New Zealand is, like this amazing ecosystem, you know what I mean, with species that go back to the time of the dinosaurs and things like this. But we have all of these different types of ecosystems that support all of these different kinds of life. And when you think about that, it will help you to understand why we have the attention of many different species of extraterrestrial, because they all have different needs as well. And so they're looking for, what do we need to sustain our life on a world? We have information indicating that the Greys, destroyed their own planet in a war, which is what we are desperately concerned we might do here. And they're living on a planet that is way close to the sun, and they have a very short lifespan because of the radiation, 30 years tops, And so what they're looking for, like a lot of these others, is ecosystems that will work for their individual forms of life. And we've seen so many different kinds. People have reported reptilians, the praying mantis. You've heard about the ones that live underwater. We've seen and heard about different types of digestive systems and how they, how their hearts and lungs work, and what kinds of things they need to actually sustain themselves in terms of, nutrition. And that's what we're looking at here. We have literally a gold mine in the earth, and we're destroying it, and that's very, very devastating to a much bigger picture, which involves the entire universal, the entire universal sphere of existence. And worlds like the Earth garner attention because they are in so much need of protection. And unfortunately, we as a species do not have the foresight like many of them might have about the serious consequences of the use of nuclear power. And we don't have the foresight about even the serious consequences of the abuse of the ecology. You know what I'm saying there?
Well, I can say this. You can't keep pumping the blood out of the earth and expect not having earth changes. What I mean, pumping oil, for example, And then after you drain the field, you start pumping water in, thinking, oh, this will stabilize it. It doesn't stabilize it. A few years later, all of a sudden, you find big sinkholes developing everywhere. A lot of the stuff it's been going on. It's been all brought on by humans for the last 100 years. We have actually taken a beautiful planet in the last 100 years and have almost got it to the point where it's not going to support life probably another 100 years from now at the rate we're going.
Well, and that is a very scary prospect, but it is the prospect we're facing, and it shows us how important and how significant every one of our individual lives can be in terms of what we do choose to do in terms of protecting our planetary sphere. And it is very difficult because part of what happened over the last 100 years is, as we all know, we had an industrial revolution, and we had misunderstanding because of, lack of understanding of these bigger things. We have to look at how people were 100 years ago. They did not have the understanding that any of these things could actually do the amount of damage that they can. Now that we do know this, we have to change the way we're doing things because it's absolutely true. We can take advantage and take for granted what's been given to us and not even realize that we can go forward and possibly destroy it and lose it as a result. One of the things that I have found to be interesting is, seeing that there are some people that we hear about, not very often, but we hear about them, who are coming up with really, really revolutionary ways to, first of all, clean up polluted lakes. There's several people who've come up with really neat ideas to start dealing with the plastics in our oceans. And that's the kind of thing we want to really energize because these are people that God is sending to Earth to give us some answers as to what can we do about the damage that's already done, which is going to have to be dealt with if we want to clean this up and give the Earth a chance to regenerate. We don't want the Earth to have to regenerate by having to expel the inhabitants. And that's basically what happened, with the last ice age. The asteroid hits, the dinosaurs all go extinct, and the Earth regenerates. But that's hopefully we don't want that to happen. We would like to avoid that if at all possible. So we want to give the Earth a chance to regenerate by working in cooperation with the process of regeneration rather than against it. And we do have a huge problem in front of us because one of the things that I think is going to be the most difficult to overcome is the varying countries making individual decisions about what they are willing to do in climate change and cleaning up the planet.
Well, I gotta interject here something, okay? Japan right now, they're faced because of the reactor meltdown reactors meltdown, which is still going on. They have billions of gallons of wastewater that's highly radioactive. And they're very close to dumping it into the Pacific Ocean because they have nowhere else to put it. And as soon as they dump this into the Pacific Ocean, it's going to kill a lot of sea life. Right now in Washington State, off of California, off of Oregon, they're already finding fish that is radioactive from what's happened in Japan. Now, once this happens, it is going to do some massive damage to sea life. And that's the problem we're facing. Our technology is not where it should be. And all these things that is going on, I just can't see how we're going to recover from it. I can't. I really feel like our planet has been rebooted several times. I can't believe I agree
with you. I think it has.
I just can't believe that we're the only race it has ever been here. I have a feeling because the Sphinx itself, they came to conclusion, I've brought this up numerous times on our show here, that the Sphinx is way older than they ever thought. The wear marks on the back for years and years, they said, oh, that was created from the sand blowing on it. Well, in the last few years, they came to the conclusion, no, the Sphinx was under an ocean. Well, if it was under the ocean, that puts it pre-man. So who created the Sphinx? Who created some of the stuff out there, the technology that's still remaining? I think a lot of this stuff is pre-us humans, our race that's walking the planet and walking the streets right now. That scares me. And I'm really scared is if we don't, in our minds, get ourselves focused and realize and get our governments to realize we can't go on the way it's going. Antarctica, okay, we're not talking first it was 100 years, then it was 40, then it's 20. I've been reading now it's 10 to 15 years. And then when that happens, basically all of Europe is going to go into an ice age. We're not even prepared for it. We're not even prepared for it at all. Certainly the guy living in North Carolina on the seacoast or in Florida that owns land isn't prepared for it.
No, we're not prepared for any of it. I agree with you completely. And I do feel we have ample evidence to indicate that we have put the Earth through regeneration many, many times. We've got the Sphinx, which you very articulately explained. We have in India, hundreds of feet below where they have, evidence of a previous atomic war that must have happened, millennia ago. We have, the Ice Age, but we also have indications of other species that have intermingled over time. So we know that this is very possibly what happened. We have a lot of underwater cities as well, not just Atlantis and Lemuria, but they found a lot of underwater places. And so what we see is the possibility that over millions of years, the Earth may have had many, many different civilizations that we may never really know about because they are so ancient. And so what this tells us, which ironically is the conundrum of the mortal realms, is let's take the planet, but let's go back to the individual soul as well, because the problem is the same. What happens is we reincarnate, and we lose our way, and we end up standing still and not achieving what we need to do when we get here. Same thing is happening with the planet. It's happening over and over again. It has to regenerate. It has to go through a whole new epoch of time because we keep messing it up. So we're messing it up on a grander scale as a species. We're messing it up on an individual scale. Well, we're missing the fact that not only do we have to deal with the spiritual evolution of the soul, and the fact that if we don't, we are missing the point of our existence here. One of the things we understand is that as mortal realm, we come in here and we are here temporarily. Some people are here for a few years. Some people are here maybe at most 100. Most people, are somewhere between, 50 and 70 years, and we lose a lot of people who are very young. We forget how short our lifespan is. Now, that in and of itself should tell us something about the purpose of our existence. It means that there is something that we must achieve in this very short period of time that we are given here in this physical realm in order to accomplish the purpose of our incarnation. And again, that goes back to the purification of the soul. And this is happening on a societal level as well. We see this not only in all of these ecological disasters, the climate change, the fact that we have ample evidence to indicate that the Earth has had to regenerate many times over, but we also see it in the fact that we have many different levels of evolution that exist within our world, all at the same time in different locations. We have things like ISIS. We have things that come in that are almost like prehistoric man, where people are a completely different space spiritually than they might be in another location. We have Aborigines, we have shamans in the woods, we have people living in absolute poverty, and we have people living in absolute wealth. There are many, many different scenarios that we can take on in our incarnations on Earth. This is a broad panorama of experience for the human soul. But what we're missing is that we have a very short period of time to accomplish something that will change the thrust of our spirit when we leave this planet, when we die. And if we don't, then we've stood still and wasted time yet again. And we have done that. We have wasted time, not just individually as souls, but as a species, over and over and over again. And one of the things that out-of-body experiences will teach all of us is to stop wasting time and to go directly towards the focus of why are you here this time? What do you need to be doing? And this is what we're going to have to do with the planet as well. And, we only have so much control over that outcome, but we have to do that as well. It's going to be a big challenge. We don't know how it's going to turn out yet, but it could go very badly or it could go well. And a lot is determined by how much assistance we allow to come in to help us. When we are allowing higher assistance to come in to help us, even individually, we are actually allowing higher assistance to come into the realm. So we don't realize that by taking up the mantle of our own spiritual evolution, we are actually also allowing the mantle of the spiritual evolution of the species, of the race, and of the planet to also be receiving higher thrusts. And so everything that we do towards that good is going to be affecting all of these things across the board. And that's what makes it so important.
I think so. Now, another question, too. How about when you travel to a parallel universe? Have you talked to anybody that has seen what the planet has ended up? Has it ended up beautiful, or could it been a demise of a planet?
I'll tell you what I saw. I had an out-of-body experience about this actually years ago, and I was taken to another planet, and I was there with many beings from many different planets. It was very interesting because there were so many different types of beings there. And we had been taken there specifically to watch what was going to happen to the Earth. And we're watching from a distance, and the Earth is spinning, and we're seeing all this energy, and it looks all of a sudden like the Earth is actually coming towards us and is going to crash into the planet. We all experience this moment of panic. But what happens is a parallel Earth is born instead. So what you end up having is there is this one world of the Earth, which is very, very much the way it is right now. And the parallel Earth was a higher dimensional experience of the Earth. So this was more for those spirits and souls who were actually moving their vibrational thrust forward towards evolution. And so there was like a transfer of consciousness in this, in that it was like a part of the Earth was separated and apart from this older Earth, which was no longer going to be able to serve some of these inhabitants who needed to be in a higher vibrational thrust of the Earth. So there were two Earths. One was a lighter Earth, and the other one remained much more of a solid, kind of more darkened kind of plane of existence. And it was shown that the souls would resonate to the Earth that was most compatible to their own spiritual evolution at the time. And so, and I've read about this even with other people since I had the experience, having something about the parallel separation of the Earth. There can be, ironically, when you look at parallel realities, there can be dozens of parallel Earths. But this was something that I was shown specifically that particular time, maybe to show it to me in a way that I could understand. Because, sometimes when these experiences get into, so much multiplicity with our conditioned human mind, we have to have a little bit of help to understand. You know what I'm saying? It's hard for us to understand what we're seeing. But in reality, we could have dozens of parallel Earths. They could all be serving, multitudinous purposes at the same time. But I do think, when we look at what we're looking at for the trajectory of this realm, this parallel Earth that we are all traveling on, we have some concerns about what that outcome can be, because certainly it could be very bad. You know what I mean?
That's the scary part. I kind of got a funny feeling we're going on the bad side. So I do, really feel it has a lot to do with a person's attitude in life too. I mean, a lot of people are going around and feeling negative all the time. And that, the old term is, if you feel negative, it breeds negativity. And that's what happens. I think if people were more into religion, more into loving themselves, their neighbors, their wives, their family, and humans, I got a funny feeling that, we wouldn't be where we're at right now.
Well, it's a very good point. And, one of the things that I would suggest to people, because I think, to be fair to most people, are feeling this negativity and this thrust that comes in. We see it even on a political level in our country. There's such a divide. But what we can do individually, is if we recognize that within ourselves of, I'm really having a hard time not being negative. But I recognize that staying that way is not serving me, and it's not serving the realm, and it's not going to help anybody move forward. What we can do is we become consciously aware of that, and then we start making one decision at a time, where we're going to start, okay, instead of just being really angry about this, I'm going to do this instead, this one time. And then you just start doing one thing at a time. And of course, we absolutely want to encourage kindness to one another. We want to give each other, the benefit of the doubt. There is a lot of accusatory type behavior in our country in particular these days, where people really want to just tear people down. They find a flaw or a fault, and they don't have the necessary compassion for the fact that, we all have those faults. And we want to be holding up our brothers and sisters, not tearing them down. And when people have a fall or when people are struggling, we don't want to rip them down further. We want to help to lift them up. One of the things that I was taught from the very beginning in my out-of-body experiences was that, first of all, creation continues to create, and that we have to give back to creation what creation gives to us. And much of what I do in the out-of-body state has to do with entering into other realms, not just doing the alterations that we talked about earlier, but going into other realms, whether they're purgatorial realms or lower realms, and offering energetic assistance and alteration to souls who are struggling in those realms. Why do we do this? Because I have spiritual guardians from higher realms than this who are helping me. And that's how we give back to creation what creation gives to us. That we have to become compassionate towards our brothers and sisters who are struggling in these mortal realms, and with the concepts of good and evil and the things that are holding them down in the negativity that is making it impossible for them to have a forward thrust. So what we do individually, if we see that in ourselves, we start making individual decisions. Don't take on everything all at the same time. You say, I'm going to do this one thing to combat this negative thinking that I've got going on, or I hate this, or I hate this person, or I hate this situation, and I'm going to come up with something very positive that I'm going to do instead, even if it's not something profoundly amazing. It's just, I've decided that I'm going to love that person, despite the fact that I know this. I'm going to change my attitude about this situation. I am going to love this situation, even though it is painful and filled with all kinds of emotional conflict, because I'm going to offer compassion to my own life, or to the life of another. So even if there's nothing you can do, like like, okay, I can't go out and completely resolve this situation, just like I can't go out and clean the oceans all by myself. But we have people make a decision where they're going to do one thing. And then it starts multiplying. We have to start allowing ourselves to allow compassion to arise within our souls towards ourselves. And also then it makes it much easier when we are truly honest with ourselves to allow that compassion to arise for others too. In the out-of-body travel experience, you are often taken into your own vices, your own failings, the things you may not have done correctly or the best. And so you're shown your faults, your failings, your flaws. And the reason for this is not for you to feel like crap about yourself. It's for you to be able to recognize and then begin the work of altering or changing that particular aspect. And as you do so, it allows more light to come into your soul. But the other thing that happens is when we are given the beautiful opportunity to actually witness our own flaws in their truth, which means that we see it the way God sees it. When we are given to see our own flaws, it allows for us to generate a great deal of compassion for our fellow human beings, because there's not one of us who does not struggle with a whole plethora of issues or vices or flaws. And what we find is that when we try to love one another, stand with one another as we face our demons, so to speak, face our failings, so to speak, when we stand with one another, we all rise. And that's what we forget and what we miss when we enjoy the downfall of another. We need to remember that the reality is that there is not one among us who doesn't have something that they're not proud of in their life, if not many, many things. I think for me it's many, many things, and what we have to do is develop this desire to be an aid and a helpmate to our fellow travelers through this realm by being loving, kind, compassionate, and present for those who are undergoing struggles, rather than compounding the suffering and the difficulty that they face by judgment, by unkindness, by not recognizing that we all are, but for the grace of God go I, and we all know that many of the things that we see in our brothers and sisters are things that we also share. And so this honesty with ourselves and with others allows all of us to rise. And we have to be kinder to one another. And it really is, very, very simple in that the first steps we take are what appear to be minute, but they're not minute, because what it is it is a complete change in trajectory. Now, a lot of people will struggle in these times with the negativity. And one of the things that we have to remember is that the way the realm is going always impacts us. And so there is a lot of negativity in the vibrations of the realm. And people have gotten even more and more negative, greatly in part because it's continuing to just get thicker and thicker and thicker in the spiritual spheres around us. And people feel that, they respond to it. But what we can do is recognize it in ourselves, and then we make a decision about what we're going to do just for one step. Because if we try to take the whole thing on, then it's overwhelming. If you take, okay, I'm going to change my trajectory about this one thought or this one instance in my life, then you can take another one, and then it starts to multiply on itself. But if you just look at it and you're just like surrounded in this real negative construct, it feels way too overwhelming to overcome. And that's why we want to take one step of kindness, whether it's kindness towards ourselves, kindness towards others. It's all going to be that we want to do something that is within the energy of love, because love is the transformative substance of the spirit and the soul. And so what we can do then is examine what that is around us through the eyes of love and come up with, okay, what's that step going to be? And it becomes much simpler, because what we realize is every movement of love is changing the trajectory for your soul, but we're also changing the trajectory of the unit of consciousness, the oneness of life. Every thought that we have is going to impact that. But at the same time, because there is so much negativity within that sphere of thinking, people are going to be impacted by it and feel it. And that's why they have to make conscious decisions to counter it. Because it's not going to happen automatically. It's going to be harder because there is so much negativity right now. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. Hey, Marilynn, we're virtually out of time. How can people find your books, your website? Give out all this information.
We are at outofbodytravel.org. I've written over 90 books, 30 magazines, and I even have 15 CDs on out-of-body travel. And you can download all of that for free there at outofbodytravel.org. We also offer a course of study there where you can follow some very specific guidelines to begin and follow through with your own journey to out-of-body travel. And you can contact me as well. The email is at the website, and we'd love to see you there.
Well, Marilynn, it's been really great having you on Night Dreams Talk Radio. We learned a little bit tonight, but I guess it all comes down to, out-of-body, experience to, universal or whatever, to out there anyway, is your attitude. And we need to really think about our families, our human race, and think positive thoughts versus negative thoughts. I mean, it's really hard to think sometimes positive with all the things that's happening worldwide. But you know what? This has been going on as long as humans been, walking the earth. It's just more noticeable now because of the internet.
Yes, that's true, and it is the human conundrum. It is our definite human conundrum.
Oh, yeah, it is. Anyway, Marilynn, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. It was great talking with you, Gary.
Okay, you take care and have a great weekend that's coming up.
You too. Thank you so much.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm sorry, people have been, messaging me, oh, you're not your normal self. No, I've been sick the last couple of days, actually in bed for the last couple of days. I had to do the show tonight. I just could not go another day without doing the show. But, out-of-body travel, time travel, all this stuff out there, I do feel that it has to be some truth of it, because I've talked to so many people that have had out-of-body experiences where they saw themselves, as an adult when they were a kid. Certain things happened that they had that out-of-body experience when they were young materialized. I do think we have that capability, but we do have such a negative outlook at life, just even day-to-day living. And I think as a human race, it all adds up. I don't know. Anyway, tomorrow we're going to be talking about UFOs. Friday, we're going to be talking about UFOs. Next week, we're going to be talking about aliens and UFOs. Make sure you tune in to Night Dreams Talk Radio. Tell your friends about us. You'll find us at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. Again, I apologize. I'm just not my bubbly self here. It's even hard to even talk right now. I'm losing my voice. Everybody, have a great evening, and we'll be back tomorrow for the full 2 hours. Take care.
The views, opinions, and representations expressed on the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network and its website are those of the hosts, guests, and participants, and are not necessarily those of or endorsed by the network, its affiliated stations and broadcasts, the management, other hosts, or advertisers of the network. The shows found on the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network can, but do not necessarily, promote any particular lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice. These shows are for entertainment purposes only, and are not intended to treat, diagnose, and or claim any cure of disease or condition, or give any medical or legal advice.
You're listening to my friend Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio, the best in paranormal radio.